All right, so assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I literally just woke up not too long ago. I sleep in on the weekends because I have really bad sleeping problems, or whatever. So I hope you guys are having a good day. I haven't even taken a shower yet. I know it sounds gross. I'm about to fix it. I'm about to go ahead and do that in a bit. But the reason that I do this is because before the open mic happens, I want to set some bases, right? And I'm going to send this along this video along with the invite for the open mic. And I think this is very important because I want to be a consistent person, right? And I'm going to put this in the back section for my video, but it's very, like, for me, I notice a lot, right? This happens to me a lot. I push people's buttons a lot, and I don't really think I'm doing that because I'm consistent in the way the things I talk about with them, my style of humor, the subject matters that I have, and I rub people off the wrong way, and I have a really bad problem doing that, and I always question why. I don't know, maybe it's my mental state. Maybe I just have a different perspective on things. Maybe it's just happens. Some people are really micro about things and they build it up. I'm not sure. But from now on, I am going to have a banner, right? And I'm going to put under the banner, hey, I'm going to talk about taboo subject today. And if you don't want to have a conversation with this subject, hey, please, leave or whatever. If you don't feel comfortable getting on camera and saying this certain thing, or whatever like that. Honestly, I think after this, I may not cam up as much in certain conversations or whatever like that, just for the posterity's sake, or I edit my videos to where, I'm not, all the old ones, I'll keep them up for a little bit, but I'll take them down just to, I guess if people don't feel comfortable, if they do cam up, not be on camera or whatever like that, right? The reason I say this is because like my previous workplace, for instance, most of the jobs I've worked, I never had a problem for the most part talking to people and then rubbing them off the wrong way until like the recent years. And especially like talking about conversations which are considered inappropriate. Now, certain conversations that were considered inappropriate are considered appropriate now, especially when we talk about like race and politics. A lot of people are like, with the current situation right now, especially after last year, people are very open to say, hey, we need to talk about race. And if it makes people feel uncomfortable, so be it. But it's important, right? And then when Me Too got big, oh, hey, we need to be more open and talking about, this issue. And this is a taboo subject that makes people uncomfortable, but we really need to talk about it. So it seems like in and out, there's an ebb and flow of when society deems that certain things are appropriate. And of course, for most of us, right, we don't really have these conversations in the public arena. Maybe we do on YouTube. And like I say before in all my videos, I state things from not from an anecdotal experience when I talk about my life experience. I'm going to talk about also, data. And I'm not using numbers to disparage anybody of anything, but when you talk about certain issues, you have to talk about it from a numbers-based thing. And like, for instance, if we were talking about incarceration in the United States, I'm a black man, right? I know that black males are misrepresented or overly represented in the incarcerating body of the United States. That's point blank, period. That's not even disputed anymore, right? That's just pure knowledge, right? At the same time, if a white guy says it, yeah, I noticed that some people will get offended about it and not even understanding the context of the conversation. Like, you know what I mean? Like if a white guy says, hey, black dudes are there's a lot more black guys in prison. Some people are, from an emotional, logical standpoint, they think he's just making a racist statement. No, he's actually making a factual statement. Now, if he wants to say, oh, all black men are in jail because they're terrible people, instead of maybe racial bias, yada, 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 the way the court systems are, they're less likely to get an actual lawyer and they get a public defender, this and that and the third, and they don't also take into account of the economic demographic of what they are. That is what it is, and then you can understand that. But I think a lot of the times we look at things for face value and we're like, oh, blah, 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 this person's being problematic, but, you know, X, Y, and Z, right? Or another subject that I talked about was, you know, I had the thing on femicide, which I'm going to readdress later. And I think that's a perfect conversation to have. And the way I was approaching that conversation was, why is it that certain countries have high rates of actual murder, not the, like just the domestic violence or whatever like that. I'm talking about actually murder against women, which is called femicide. The United Nations acknowledges that as being a problem, right? That there's a specific like how there's homicide, which is somebody just killing somebody else. Femicide is, you know, the killing of a female. Usually it's done by family members, relatives, or partners, right? You know, family relatives, the same thing. But yeah, you get the drift of it. Or close acquaintances, right? And so in order to have the conversation, that context of the conversation, I actually went over to look at the data from different sources, right? And I was like, hey, here's the ranking of all these countries, and not only when it comes to homicide ratings, but also femicide ratings. Now, somebody of those countries could probably get offended. And I'm not saying that you're apparently a bad person or anything like that, but you have to understand that there is a narrative out there that the media pushes of these countries are more violent and these countries, these countries aren't, and things like that. And I wanted to show, hey, I'm pushing back against the media narrative, and I'm just showing the data that's actually being collected of these crimes and where these crimes are being committed. Now, if that offends somebody, hey, it's going to happen because that's a touchy subject. But I think that we kind of run away from finding and fixing issues because we're caught in our feelings, right? Now, that's a serious subject, right? So, and this can apply to any demographic group or whatever like that. You could say, oh, you know, Black women are more likely to be single mothers, this and that, and this, that, and the third. If somebody is approaching that and they're not using that to disparage and go out, like, see how terrible Black people are and this and that, you know, this, that, and the third, I understand where they're coming from, because if you're actually trying to have a constructive conversation and bring that up, that's one thing. So the second point is with humor. And this is a big thing in our culture right now. Comedy is going through a huge paradigm shift, and has been for like the last couple of years. And I think it really started with, and believe it or not, I think it started with when Bill Cosby got exposed and stuff like that, where regardless of what you believe, hey, he is technically a convicted sex offender. Like, he's been tried and convicted in court. Now, how those court proceedings went and the trial went and the investigation went, you can have your opinion on that, but the actual data out there, you know, not the data, but he's actually in prison right now for it. So it is what it is, right? Regardless of how you feel about it. So since then, I noticed there's a huge shift in comedy on what's considered appropriate, because even though he never really had any sexual comedy or whatever like that, it became about what jokes are considered appropriate, what jokes are considered inappropriate. And actually, my favorite comedians talk about race, right? And I know a lot of people, their favorite comedians talk about race, especially Black comics, right? Black comics are usually some of the most revered comics out there in history, right? You go back to Red Fox, you go back to who's the guy? He was a juicer. I forgot the guys. Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of those guys, what talked about was race. Oh, it's basically Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney's the GOAT. You know, and I know he's got his recent scandal and stuff like that involving Richard Pryor. I'm not going to get into that, but those guys were so good and so revered because they had uncomfortable conversations, right? And I know these same, you know, a lot of people, you know, I even see in the workplace, oh, hey, who's your favorite comedian? It's this guy, it's that guy, this guy. And when you look at these guys, obviously people, in order to consider them a good comedian, you know, their source material, and altogether their source material is race, right? So sometimes I notice that we can acknowledge that, but when we actually have the conversations that these guys were talking about, right? Because they actually weren't just saying jokes. They were trying to have oh, thanks, hey, thanks, Shirley. Yeah, Yeah, I'm just talking about, so for the open mic tomorrow, I just wanted to be consistent with people and say, hey, like, this is the kind of space I want to create and stuff like that. And I want to talk about why is it so easy for me? Why, I'm not trying to play victim here or anything like that, but why do I offend people so easily when I'm consistent with people? And it seems like they don't have a problem with what I say one day and the next day they do. So, yeah. So when it comes to race, I have open conversations with people about race, and as long as they support what I'm saying, they're kind of cool with it, right? And we could be anything like, oh, white people are racist, white people do this, they do this, they do that, right. Like, that's an open conversation. And now even the federal government, for a while, had critical race theory. Even the federal government put out materials and mandatory training on saying, hey, racism is a problem. I hate to say it, they were like, hate to say it, but white people are the main progenitors of racism. Now they took it, there was an executive order that took it down, but most likely they're going to bring it back with Joe Biden being the president, right? So we talked about sexism too. Sexism was a part of that too, homophobia, all that stuff, right? So we're open to have these conversations or whatever like that. And some people have it in a humorous context. Like, I talk to people about humorous context. Like, there's somebody that I know that work with that all the time. He says black men are trash. He's a black guy, and he's of a certain community, and for certain ideological mindset, as far as like it's called intersectional feminism. At least that's what it seems like. It's intersectional feminism. So a lot of black feminists love to kind of put heterosexual black men under the bus. It's like openly, right? Kind of like how there's a lot of heterosexual black men that like to put black women under the bus, especially in these spaces, right? So people are open to say that, but if I say something that's of the same context, I'm the guy they get mad at. And I think the reason they get mad at me is because I'm unwavering in my opinion. Like, I don't have an opinion about something unless I get knowledgeable about it or I have like a lot of experiences with it. And I let people, for the most part, say pretty much whatever they want. I very, very rarely do I ever get super offended about anything that anybody could say. And, so sometimes I share humor that I think is funny, right? I share humor that I think is funny. And I know sometimes it rubs people off the wrong way. But it's like, we can joke around about white people. Like, for instance, one of my favorite shows, and if the person's watching this, hey, this is not a shade to you. You're a great person. And if I offended you, I apologize. But I'm consistent with my humor. I'm never directing anything at anybody. And in fact, people direct humor at me about stuff that I do, like, for instance, about stuff that I think is funny or whatever like that. And some of the same people that I send stuff in, consider it funny. So maybe, it's really an individual based thing. And I need to know how to read that, set those boundaries with me personally from the get-go. And then honestly, I would have less problems offending you in the future. That's how I look at it, right? Like, let me know your pet peeves and stuff like that, because you never know. These days, I hate to say, somebody gets more micro offended about something, right? Like, oh, completely. I get people that talk bad about religion all the time. All the freaking time. Like, but I never up and like, hey, blah, blah, blah. At the very most, I just say, hey, you guys can pretty much say whatever you want to say, but hey, you guys can have that conversation, but just don't have that around me. Like, take that over to another room if I feel like some type of way, but I'm not gonna be like, hey, just stop having that conversation. And then most of the time I'm like, hey, if you want my opinion on it, if I know it's a real controversial opinion, like if there's a conversation on religion and sexuality and stuff like that, and it happened at work, and the people ask me, like, it's one thing if it's just an open air conversation and somebody interjects, but if you ask me personally my opinion on something, right, I'm not going to have that conversation with you because I know my opinion for sure is going to offend you. Like, I'm knowledgeable enough on that. Like, if you ask for somebody's opinion on a subject that deep, right, and that taboo, hey, I'm just going to withdraw myself from my conversation. Especially since now I'm in a higher position at my job where I'm going to be held more accountable for things like that. Like, I can't play ignorant, you know what I mean? And the only time I'm going to joke around with people like that is people on my same level, because I think like they know me a lot better, right? But yeah, all too often I see people just get caught in their feelings, and I'm not one of those people that is always super, oh, blah, 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 offensive, because the stuff I get offended over is stuff that's, I think is more personal, right? Like, you know what I mean? If I feel like it's a straight personal attack against me as a person, not my quote identity, like that, it doesn't bother me as much. And people are being like, hey, you're pathetic, you're a loser, all that kind of stuff. And they directed at me, at me, myself, or my character, then that's one thing. But I'm not caught up in the identity politics side of things, because my mentality now is, man, this is a temporary situation that I'm in right now. Eventually I'm going to leave. I'm not, I like the people that I work with, but at the same time, I'm most likely, these people aren't going to, try to see me for the rest of my life. Like, I'm just going to fade off into the distance or whatever like that. So having those connections with people is good, but at the same time, it's like, hey, it's all too easy for those connections to get broken. And so screw it, man. I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. But thanks for Shirley for showing up. So I'm going to create a banner. Basically, anytime I talk about a taboo subject, I'm going to say, hey, if you don't feel comfortable having this conversation, please leave right now, or understand that I'm not here beating a dead horse. Like, I'm not here having these conversations just to offend people. And some people are such like, and I know a lot of people are freaking hypocrites too. That's another thing, especially when it comes to social media. Like, I know what you say in comment sections. I've known what you said in comment sections. And especially if you know somebody says something offensive to you, the very first thing you do is you try to attack the person's identity, right? Like, somebody of a certain gender says something, or somebody of a certain race or religion says something. You really can't come up with a good argument against that person, but you go for a low blow and you diss their identity. And it's like, all too often, I think, since I have strong convictions now, maybe I'm not the best at adulting, let's just say that, but I have strong convictions of my belief system, right? Of things that I consider important and valuable in my life, right? Like, I may not be the best moral person, but I do have a strong sense of, quote, morality, what I'm saying, and things like that. So, or ideological stances. So if somebody says something against that, like, for instance, in the comment section, like, I'm pretty sure if you see some of my videos, there's some people that, hey, they disagree with what I say vehemently, but they don't go against me as a person. They just say, hey, I think that you're wrong, this, that, and third. And there's certain pages that I've gone on about controversial subjects. I've given my opinion, right? And I notice people say that, but at the same time, when I say that, it's like people go hard in the paint. That's why a lot of people use avatars, right? They use avatars because they want to hide their face, because they're afraid about the repercussions of what the things they say. I'd rather create a space and people to feel comfortable, right? Because they see me, they see who I am. I'm a black man, right? I'm not some guy, especially from my voice. I've gotten criticized for this in my voice too. Oh, you have an avatar. The way your vernacular is and the way you talk, you must not be a black guy. You're probably a white guy behind the screen, and you're saying all this stuff about black people, and it makes you look bad. So, or hey, you're talking about Islam, and you're probably not even practicing. You're talking out your butt. As you can see, I got a freaking prostration mark, right? I mean, over there is my freaking prayer mat right there. I mean, that's why I put myself publicly, and that's probably to my detriment, depending on who sees this. But man, dude, there's so many people that say way worse things, man, on the internet. I've gotten on here once and completely gone against maliciously somebody of a certain identity or of a certain religion or anything like that. Now, I do have criticisms of maybe certain people, but it's not solely based on their identity. It's based upon their actions and how they use whatever ideals that they have and how they perpetuate it, or how they try to enforce other people to conform to the ideas that they have. You know what I mean? That's the only beef I have with them. But them as a person, I would never go over to this person and say, oh, even though, for the most part, it's pretty much on the books. This is not a controversial subject. White people created modern day racism, and they perpetuated it through systems of oppression. That's just common knowledge, right? Like nobody, you can go to any college, any workplace, like has racism training. They know basically what the deal is, right? Me saying that is not going up to white people and saying you're inherently a bad person. And there's other people that straight up are, for instance, certain other subjects are taboo too. I'm just gonna say this real quick, and then I'm gonna jump off. IR dating, and we know what IR dating is. IR dating to some people is like, for instance, people got offended at people that I know was for saying, "Hey, I want to marry a black woman. I want to marry somebody of the same religion as me." Why is that a controversial statement? Why is that logically a controversial statement? Because, for instance, it's like some of the same people, some of them from their ideology, right? Ideology is some people that same mindset that, oh, you can shoot at a love who you want to love. I've had conversations with those same people, basically considering that, quote, my race is an endangered species. I mean, we've been 13% of the population for 40, almost 50 years. Does that make any logical sense? I mean, if you value your people is not racist. Even if a white guy says, "Hey, I want to marry an Italian woman. I want to marry, I'm freaking Nordic. I want to marry a Nordic woman because I want to preserve my culture. Preserve my culture is an important thing for me." Why would somebody get offended over that? Because you're self-conscious about your decisions. You know what I'm saying? And love who you want to love. But I've dated IR too. And if I meet somebody that loves me for who I am going to choose that person regardless of what their race is. But I consciously am making a decision at this point in my life because I don't consider myself, quote, pro-black. But I do get the argument from a lot, quote, pro-blacks that you cannot talk about the state of the black community, right? And try to fix the black community and not want to have black families. Like, that's just logic to me, right? So for me, that's not a big deal. Now, for other people, hey, it is a big deal because they're self-conscious about, their choices, and that's not this to them. Hey, love who you want to love. Like I mentioned, IR dated. I even tried to marry, actually, last year. I tried to marry a girl that was from Afghanistan. She was Pashtun. I thought we had great personalities. Obviously, we're very attracted to each other and things like that. And I tried to have it actually in halal manner. All right. But I literally have boundaries because of my race. And I'm not going to go through that anymore. And I've had several experiences where I had boundaries and barriers put like between me and somebody else really getting to know each other because of their parents or their beliefs, or they just feel uncomfortable being with somebody other race. Like, it's all good if nobody knows that you're with a black man, but the very minute that your parents know that you're with a black man, or the very minute that your friends know that you're a black man, then you want to kind of hide me. Like, I'm a grown ass man. You're not hiding me anymore. If you can't walk down the street with me hand in hand, or if you can't, even consider, being under my tutelage as far as like being a husband or something like that and sharing my last name, I don't need to be with you whatsoever. Sex and companionship is important to a lot of people, but I'm not going to sacrifice my character and my self-respect by being somebody's little fling on the side. That's terrible. That's terrible for my mental health. That's terrible for my self-esteem. Like, I'm more than that. So that being said, I'm going to create a banner for tomorrow's open mic. I'm going to send the link to everybody that's ever sent me an email. You're welcome to join, and hopefully we have some constructive conversations, because I do have a diverse amount of people. I have people that are religious. I have people that are not religious. I have white people, black people, people from overseas, I'm saying, Somali, Arab, people in the UK, people in the US. And I think this is a good opportunity. And I think that this is what I think is good about what the space I'm creating, is that I'm getting a multitude of different kinds of people to get together, and a lot of different channels. I noticed that it's a certain demographic. It's like all a bunch of black guys and a few black women, or all a bunch of guys, just period, of different races, no females. So that's what I'm trying to do. So tomorrow, hopefully we have a good time. So for the future, also, unless it's like the other person's camming up, I'm probably not going to cam up on any more of my stuff or whatever like that. I'll cam up to previous videos, but from now on, you guys know what I look like for the most part. If you've been here, you guys trust me. It may be more conducive for me to never cam up again or whatever like that, because God knows somebody could dig this up. And, you know, even though I'm saying that I'm not being malicious and that I'm not saying anything controversial, somebody's going to get butthurt and be like, oh, you said this. Meanwhile, at work, you openly talk about your sex life. I mean, that's more open. You're more open to talk about your sex life, but talking about real issues, that offends you. But somebody openly talking about their sex life, which could be considered sexual harassment for the most part, let's be honest, it could be sexual harassment for the most part, is more acceptable than people having conductive conversations about controversial issues. But anyway, that's it. So thank you for tuning in. If you see this, let's get things rolling. Everybody that sent me an email, I'll reply back to it with the link. If you see this and you want to join last minute, we'll put in the go in the comment sections, like, share, subscribe, and all that. And I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have a good one. Deuces.